A little early, but we do have some refreshments back there. Don't think we have any hair of the dog, but maybe we have some coffee back there. Good morning. I hope everyone had an enjoyable and productive day yesterday at the Expo, and hopefully you had some fun last night, maybe on Bourbon Street or took in a nice restaurant. We do have some coffee. We have some good eats back there to get you going for what we have scheduled this morning. So let's just begin this morning's activities. I'd like to introduce our first keynote speaker. And joining us is G. Rittenhouse. As president of Bell Labs, he is responsible for leading this top research institution and also oversees Alcatel-Lucent's intellectual property business. Prior to his current position, G was COO of Alcatel-Lucent Software Services and Solutions Group. And this division, known today as Platforms Division, also works with communication service providers worldwide to transform business through revenue-generating opportunities ranging from the cloud to mobile commerce, digital content delivery, consumer management. So G has a long history with Alcatel-Lucent and Bell Labs, having joined Bell Labs in 1993 after earning a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science at that little school called MIT. So we are indeed honored and privileged to have Dee join us this morning. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome G. Rittenhouse.
Thanks very much, Steve. Good morning, everyone. It's always fun to be the last keynote speaker after a week of thinking about these things and, of course, the late nights and whatnot. But when we think about a connected world, it really puts a lot of challenge on both ourselves because all of us have smartphones, all of us are surfing the web and connected with friends and family. But of course, from a technology perspective, the stress it puts on our networks and the financial equation that goes along with that as well. And so this morning, over the next few minutes, I'm going to address these three elements. What is a connected world? And just give you some of the statistics behind what it means to be connected and what your customers are thinking about from this point of view. Secondly, I'm going to introduce a technology, the cloud. We've talked about it a little bit this week. I'm going to present it from a slightly different perspective as not only an industry trend, but an opportunity to raise revenue and bring new services to market. And then finally, I'm going to look about new revenue generating opportunities with this kind of technology. So let's begin with some numbers. I know it's early in the morning, but we'll go through some of the statistics of these users. I've just highlighted a couple of the numbers here. 2/3 of the people in the United States sleep with their smartphones. And when I saw that statistic, I was amazed because I thought that I was the only one. And so I was reassured that actually 2/3 of us actually do this. And think about this. That's something that's so intimate. We check our email, we're checking these things, we're doing these things. I like to listen to audio books with my smartphone and whatnot. And actually thinking about it of a phone is misleading. We don't sleep with our phones. You sleep with a computer that does all sorts of things for you that has a phone application on it. And this is a real shift in the way we communicate, in the way we perceive the network and the people around us. In fact, in the UK, 2/3 of the English would actually get rid of everything, turn off their power and everything, but not their mobile internet. 85% of Germans would pass on a partner on a car before they give up the internet. Okay? This is an intimacy that is incredible. And it's changing the fundamentals of our industry. And it's not just young, old, Twitter, etc. It's everything about it. And so we have to pay attention to this. And I want to point out 3 numbers. Let me see if I can make some pointers here. 3 numbers. No, I can't. So look at 500 million. Over 500 million people are on the Facebook platform every month. 500 million. And the reason why I point this out is it's not using Facebook. It's not using Facebook. We don't, most of us sit there and have a timeline and we have a group of friends and we do all this stuff. Facebook is a $1 billion industry built on top of that platform. Entire game industries are built on top of Facebook. So Facebook is not just a portal that we go to and talk about. There's an industry built on it. Let me also point out over 100 million tablets were sold last year. Another platform. Not because tablets are cool and whatnot, but as a platform, the app stores and the applications that run on top of those platforms. And these 2 pieces represent the extremes of our industry and where a lot of the value of our industry is heading. We have smartphones as a platform that is measured in app stores and applications. It has secondary measurements of operating systems and interfaces, but the value in the marketplace is driven towards the device because it's used as a platform and the applications that sit on that platform. On the other side of our industry is the cloud. Facebook, Amazon, all these portals that people go to, driven by the applications and the communities, the connectedness of those services. And those companies are making a lot of money as well. What is missing, and what I want to point out for us, is the important section in the middle, the network, that connects these devices to the cloud. Because that part of the value chain is being squeezed. And so how do we push back as an industry to make that part of the value proposition more rewarding? So we have devices on one side, and as I point out here, 80% of the software, particularly my software in my previous role, will be on the cloud by 2016. So we have the cloud on one side, the software on the other, and the devices in between. Charles Marsh just published an article in The Voice that kind of highlights this gap that I point out here. On one side, we have the device community. And when you think about a device, besides the user interface and how much memory and how the camera works, you can think about it in 2 pieces. One is the application itself and the resource control. Your history, your user base, the way you kind of interact with the device and the way the device interacts with you. And from a device perspective, the network is just a black box. You're just a connection point that has some bandwidth. The more bandwidth, the better. The cheaper the cost, even better. Even better. On the other side is the network point of view, the cloud point of view, where all of a sudden you start thinking about resources like compute, storage, bandwidth, latency, and the actual application is unknown. It's a black box. Somebody's out there designing it and whatnot. And so how do we bridge these 2 worlds? Because it's the network and our community that actually is going to bridge those 2 worlds. And I highlight that on this slide here, just how bad it can be. So when we have devices, not only do we kind of lose track of what people are doing and our customers are doing, but as I said, the network is viewed as a black box. So these people who are designing these applications have no clue about the network, no clue about wireless. So in Bell Labs, we do a lot of measurements. We go into the network, we look at all of the data and stuff, and I just show a 24-hour period in the life of a device. This particular device is an Android device and running a weather application on it. Okay? So the red curve is the signaling curve. And you see these spikes every 6 hours. Why do we have spikes every 6 hours? Well, this application goes back to the server to synchronize every 6 hours and jams the signaling plane of the network. So even if you built out enough capacity on the data plane, with 1 million Android devices and 1 million of these applications sitting on it, your signaling plane gets swamped. Now inside of Bell Labs, we do a lot of these algorithms and filters and things like that. So we can help fix this problem by taking the red curve and filtering it so it's the blue curve. And so we can free up the signaling channel. But this is how pervasive it is. People are just thinking about Java or Skype or other things where they'll build out their own signaling plane. They'll build out their own protocols for establishing connections. They won't use IMS. They won't use any of the inherent features of the network. And it can not only be disruptive from a financial perspective and from a customer intimacy perspective, but also from a technical perspective. So here's basically the issue in front of us. On the left-hand side, we have the classic layered structure that we have today. You have transport, you have a control system, you have analytics or optimization, and then you have the application layer sitting on top of it. And these layers are loosely coupled. We couple them through standards and everything else. But if you want more control, you buy more IMS. If you want more, data from a data billing system, you enhance your data billing capability. And these are boxes with software sitting on top that you integrate into your OSS systems, and you know this space very, very well. If you want to change something, connect your billing system to your back office or connect your billing system into a policy PCRF kind of function or whatnot, requires a lot of work. The system on the green system over here is a different way of viewing the world. It's the same elements that we have today, but based on the cloud architecture. And the cloud architecture essentially has 3 main components. One is compute is dynamic. If you need more billing, you just instantiate more billing instances. If you need more signaling and control in IMS, you instantiate more signaling and control. It is storage. So if you need more resources and whatnot, you allocate more resources through a very simple interface. And then finally, and probably the most important part of the cloud, is its APIs. The way you do this is through simple function calls that are called RESTful. And it's important to understand this because this is the way the web is built today. So if you want an example of what our future looks like, look at it on the web. Simple programming languages like Java instantiate all sorts of new services through open APIs that are RESTful, and be able to create thousands of applications and services to our customers and your customers very, very quickly by any 17, 18-year-old in their garage. So once we open up the network through this cloud architecture, we're now able to scale it very, very quickly and dynamically. We're able to couple these elements together. We no longer have a layered architecture, but we have my compute, my storage, my applications, my things, by coupling these things very, very easily together through these APIs. And it adds a dynamic to our industry that we've never seen before. Let me give you an example. And it's could be the big stadium outside, but in fact, it's a different stadium. But what we did was, in Europe, they have soccer. They call it football. And their football is incredibly popular. So they'll have 100,000 people show up for a match. And a few years ago, this year they have the European Cup. A few years ago they had the World Cup. And they have these playoff systems to decide who's going to go. So within a matter of a week, what we did was we lined one of the stadiums up with small cells. We put these small cells in, and it's all IP. So you just plug them in. These small cells recognize each other. They configure each other, set all the pilots, set all the power. And very, very quickly, you've now brought in wireless capability into a stadium. OK, great. Now what are you going to do with it? Well, what we did was we brought in video. We brought in a content server, all just with a little data center, bring it all in for local access. Wrote some apps that people could follow players, get different camera angles, all this kind of stuff. In a matter of days, you set up a whole new service that people get, not just by subscribing and whatnot, but you could tear it back down again. When the game is over, move all the equipment out and move on. So there's a dynamic here in things that would have taken weeks, months, years to get the features right and get your equipment providers to provide all these things, you can now do in days and weeks. And by the way, it shouldn't surprise us. It should not surprise us. Because there's some website out there that probably does exactly the same thing that your customers are going to now. So it shouldn't surprise us. This is the way the industry goes. And now what you're able to do with the intimacy that you have with your customers, particularly in small or regional kind of areas, you could provide services that large, nationwide, the big guys would never be able to do because they don't have that visibility. They don't have that level of intimacy. So now you have the intimacy, you have the flexibility, and the opportunity to create services very, very quickly for your customers with a high willingness to pay. Whoops. So that solves one part of the problem, the network. There's another part of the problem, which is the device. So in the past, we had the portal kind of view of the world with Skype and Google Talk and FaceTime and whatnot. You register to these things and you're in that community and they have their own proprietary kind of communication scheme. Now today, those kind of applications are going into the applications themselves. You can communicate from Facebook. You can communicate from Gmail and other things like that. Set up these connections and Microsoft and Skype and all these things going on. The applications now are starting to incorporate this communication capability. The next phase of this is device-independent communication through a browser. It's a technology called HTML5. HTML5 is a communication technology that is built into the browser itself. And by doing so, any kind of web interface that you create, any kind of service that you create through this, can now access the communication technology that is in your infrastructure through another kind of technology called WebRTC. WebRTC connects into your IMS, it connects into your infrastructure. So now you can start to present applications, services to your customers very quickly through the cloud, integrated into your network infrastructure, so it's efficient, it's reliable, and things like that. And by so doing so, you can now compete with over-the-top and with other service providers, other providers in terms of apps and whatnot, very, very quickly. Because it's all, again, through open APIs and through your open API infrastructure. So this is what it looks like graphically. Again, in the past, if you wanted to write an application, it was very important that you knew the underlying operating system, whether it was Apple, whether it was Android, BlackBerry, Windows, etc. And then, so if you wanted to provide a service and you have multiple devices in your network, You had to write this application many times over these different platforms. HTML5 abstracts all of that complexity and makes it operate through the browser itself. So now, in that network that I showed you before, you're able to instantiate new capabilities. You're able to instantiate new capacity, new billing models and whatnot, very quickly through a browser that every smartphone has, and what we have today. Now, in this kind of model, we still are going to have many different variants of this. There are some people, and operators we work with throughout the world, take different approaches. Some of them actually write their own applications. And whether it's in Europe or particularly in Asia Pac, they write their applications very, very quickly, because in Japan and Korea, they have an insatiable appetite for new applications, and these applications are very, very regional. Japan is incredible, and the applications from northern Japan to southern Japan. But if you think about it from a different perspective, and some of the large carriers are doing this, you can start to think about your network as a platform itself, to open up these APIs to your customers. So now you have the network as a platform. You don't like to do that today, because if you do it today, you're not sure if you're going to overload your billing system, if you're going to overload your capacity, if you're going to overload these kind of things. But in the cloud, where if you just need more capacity, you instantiate more capacity, that worry becomes less. So now you can start to think about opening up APIs to your network, giving your customers a brand new experience. We in Alcatel-Lucent have been working on this for a long time. We called it application enablement and had some products in that space. But in fact, the industry kind of overwhelmed it, and you already see this model emerging both here in the United States as well as worldwide. So whether you open up your network and let other people build on it as a platform, or you just use these capabilities to instantiate new services very, very rapidly so that you can compete with other people, you now have the flexibility of doing so based on this cloud technology and open APIs. What does it mean from a financial perspective? Well, once you go into broadband wireless, LTE, you go into optical, all IP, build out that network. The numbers are pretty amazing. We in Bell Labs do a lot of financial modeling. We saw that the overall total cost of ownership is reduced by 50%. The net value of being able to bring in the cloud reduces your operating structure incredibly, because instead of having lots of these separate boxes all connected together, you're on the same platform, so you can increase efficiency and reduce cost by 25%. But the most important part about it is the customer intimacy. We started with the people sleeping with their cell phones, with people really choosing to have this communication experience. And that you want to have that kind of intimacy with your customers. And by being able to do this and provide these services that are so important to them, you can now sit there and go, you know what, I'm going to sleep not only with my smartphone, but with this particular application brought by you and the service group that you represent. So in summary then, there is the tablet and the smartphone are driving this revolution. The cloud is enabling this through open APIs that give us the flexibility to be able to dynamically adjust the system. And the new reality that we face is the combination between the cloud, the device through HTML5, and of course the network and connectivity will create an experience that is critical for your customers and really kind of continues to position the network and the service provider at the heart of the value proposition. With that, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Let me get this up here. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see if I can find out where I am. Thank you again. I really appreciate your comments and also a better understanding of the advantages of the cloud. Now we'll turn to our panel discussion on the industry's move to 4G LTE and how carriers and suppliers can prepare for this major shift, acquire devices, some of the strategies that two of our carrier members pursue on a daily basis. So leading this discussion, we'll have Steve Stravitz. And Steve comes to us with more than 20 years of experience in the communication industry, where he will regularly serve as a CTO for hire for new operators. He is currently CEO and managing partner of Spectrum Management Consulting. Steve has had a broad knowledge and experience in the telecom world. He worked with all major core technologies and access technologies. He's contributed to the success of some of the most sophisticated networks in the world. So frequent speaker, teaches on the subject. So we're indeed glad to have Steve as the leader of this discussion. And to give them a little more time to answer some of your questions and fill out what I think is a really interesting session and database for everyone that has interest in devices. I'll just mention the two panelists, Tony Liu from Metro PCS. He's the Vice President of Product Management, and also David Owens from Sprint. He's the Vice President of Product Management and Logistics at Sprint. And we are